Hello. Welcome to the virtual brown bag. As usual, going through the intro slides, give folks some time to join in, as well as, give us
Hey, everyone.
Hello. Giving some chance to explain what these meetings are all about and setting up expectations. First and foremost, we do record these meetings, and since we encourage folks to share, their screens, their thoughts, and their lessons, so make sure that you're not sharing anything that could cause you any trouble. Oops, in the wrong direction. Here we go. The virtual brown bag is a place where we get together, we share tips, tricks, experiences, frustrations, challenges, the things that many times we learn the hard way. Well, if we share that with others, maybe we can make somebody else's lives a little bit easier, and we just pay forward. We do this every Thursday here on Skype, 12 to 1 Central Time. Everybody's more than welcome to join in. We have shared things all over the place, even though we are normally composed of a bunch of developers. We are all like in different spectrums of being developers, either just, spending all day writing code, or sometimes we are also managing other developers, or doing QA type of work. So we're really all over the place, and we share everything related to the work that we normally do. We have a virtualbrownbag.com website where you can always find the link to this meeting here, as well as the link to the videos for the previous meetings, in case you need to review something, or you are not able to attend. You can catch up and see what we were up to the previous week. And there's also a Slack channel that we can use, that we do use to just, continue conversations that we might have here, or even suggest topics that we may have for the following week. So it's always a good way to stay in touch. All right. How's it going, George? Well, else on the call? I see Alper, I see Tony. Hello, guys. And I see... I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, and it's a Bojan or Boyan. What's the proper way to pronounce it? I don't want to butcher your name.
Proper name is Boyan. I mean, that's fine. Originally, it's spelled with J, but I changed it to Y to make it a bit easier. It's still pretty complicated. Yes.
Gotcha.
Actually, for you, the J might be more easier to pronounce properly.
No, it's funny that for the longest time, like in Brazil, we know this character. I'm gonna pull up the character here, which is not that. I'm looking for the comic book character, right? Which you guys may be familiar with. Why can I
don't tell me you have the same name as I do?
Oh, no, it's not spelled like that.
It's just
the Conan. Yeah, no, you guys know what character? Yeah, that one, right?
Conan.
So how do you guys pronounce that?
Conan.
Right, but the female.
Sonia.
Yeah.
Right?
That's Sonia.
But if you ask every Brazilian, they will say Sonja, because the J has a sh sound. That's so true. I grew up knowing that character as Sonja. So then of course, the first time I mentioned that character in the US, people are like, huh? I've never heard of anything like that. Oh, it's Sonia. Okay, got it.
Yep.
I'm surprised that's your reference point for that name and not Street Fighter. Street Fighter
is true.
Yeah,
that's very true. Didn't even think that. And Street Fighter is such a huge thing. I mean, that was huge back then, everywhere, right?
Exactly.
Yep. But that's what comes to mind. So I always try to not mispronounce folks' name. And while I do have my name mispronounced all the time.
Exactly.
Right.
I guess not as badly as mine, but still, you know the feeling.
Exactly. It's funny that like my first name is not too badly mispronounced, even though a lot of people here say Claudia, because it's more common. Like you find a lot of Claudias in the US, but not Claudios. And then I say, okay, it's not Claudia, because in Brazil that's a female name, it's Claudio. But my last name, I've heard it all sorts of different ways.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's all good. All right, so what are you guys up to? I haven't prepared anything. I have some things I would toss out there to spark some conversation. But if anybody has anything to, start sharing, please, this is the, perfect moment to do so.
I have a couple things I could talk about, but I don't know. Well, why don't you start?
Sure.
Because I've got like a random assembly of jotted notes of stuff that I'd like to bring up too, or I guess if anyone else wants to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So guys, please, at any point in time, if you feel like sharing anything, just let us know. Otherwise, George and I, we just keep pulling, random stuff out of our sleeves. One thing that's I wanted to toss out there just to get your guys' feedback. So I've always been very specific about the kinds of apps that I use on my phone. And something that I've been asking people randomly is like, I don't know, I'm not an Android guy, so I don't know what exactly or how to transcribe that to the Android users. But like on the iPhone, we have like on the home here, we have like the main apps that people configure there. These are the 4 that I always have there, right? Because those are the most important for me, and I can tell you in a little bit why. I would like to hear from you guys, what are the apps that you have for like quick access, and why is it? Like, why is it important for you for them to be there? Like, how do you use them that makes it more convenient for you? It makes you more productive, whatever the case is.
What do you mean quick access? Like just
Well, so like on the, and again, I don't know on the Android, but like on the iPhone, I can like flip through pages, right? But these 4 apps, they're always here. So
you're still showing your virtual brown bag slides.
Oh, I am so sorry. Let me stop sharing here. Thank you. Okay. That better?
Yeah. There we go.
Right. So the apps are always there. If I go right.
Oh,
pages of
in
apps.
Your dock. Yeah.
In the dock. There you go. Yeah, I didn't know if there was like a specific name for that. So what do you guys have there and why?
The only one that matters is the camera, because I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, so comes up a lot. No, I mean, like, I also have like Brave browser in there, but I don't really need it in there. Email, I mostly open via alerts. Messages, I mostly open. I don't send a text to anyone. I just take them and respond. And then same thing for phone and Slack. Those are the things I have in there, but the only one I actually like, I could get rid of all of them from there and it'll be fine. Just camera is the only one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I also don't take notes on my phone very often.
What about the others on the call? What do you have there and why? Or am I the only one that's so specific about that?
Yeah.
Let's see. I think I see something on the chat window.
I pay a bit more attention to basically the grouping of applications in the same boxes. So they're otherwise a phone, email, browser, and music.
Yeah.
Phone, email.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Browser. Phone, email, browser. Yeah.
And music.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I will say I have an entire screen just of like the music app widgets, which
same here.
Amazon Music, Audible, Libby, what's this one? Google Music? No, that's Beyond. And then
Okay. Yeah, I do the same for like well, sorry. What was that?
Oh, I said that's annoying. That's stupid that's where we are, that has to be a thing that you do for freaking music apps, because everything is 17 different walled gardens now.
Yeah, I do the same with like music and reading, like for the Kindle and the iPhone app for reading books and other PDF readers and things like that. I also have a group just for that. Interesting. I see Alper says also browser, mail, phone, text. Okay. Sounds good. Who else? Anybody else has any specific apps there that you use and a specific reason why? All right.
I have Orgzy, but like again, I don't actually take notes on my phone very often. So
wait, what is that app? I don't know that.
Orgzy, like I like Org Mode instead.
Org Mode. Okay.
Org Mode, it just saves all your notes, everything as just a series of text file in the org format, which is just a text format, similar to Markdown. I have it saving to a folder in my Dropbox. And so it's automatically backed up synced. I mean, and I find that that's good enough version control for everything I want. Now, I have it via Dropbox getting synced down to my phone. And on my phone, there's an app called Orgzy, which actually anyone that wants to get started with Org Mode, it's probably a better entry point than actual Org Mode, which requires Emacs. Yeah, so Orgzy is just a nice app that allows you to view files with proper formatting and do all the different things.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
But again, I don't actually end up taking notes in there that much. I'm not actually away from a computer that often.
Right. Yeah, same here. Yeah, it's like for me, like what I have. So the first one is the, phone, because even though like I hardly ever make phone calls, but when I do need to make a phone call, it's like it's very stupid to pick up a smartphone and see like 300 apps and not being able to find the phone. It's like I just need to make a call and I cannot use my phone for that. I feel silly. So it's like it has to be there. The other one is one, I don't know what's this tool called? I think it's Time Tracker or something like that. It's just a way for me to I keep track of certain things that I do just to see how much time I'm spending in those activities. So, for example, if I decide it's like, okay, at the end of the day, I want to play some video game. Okay, I'm going to put that on the clock because I'm like, I'm going to spend 30 minutes or an hour or whatever and not break through that, because at the end of the month, I want to see, yeah, it's fine, playing video games now and then, but what else do we do? So like when I do reading, when I do like my half hour in the morning, half hour, at night, or if I read during the day, like deliberately, I keep track of that, because like right now, if I look at this and I say, okay, the last month, how much time have I spent reading? Oh, the month, of course, just shifted. Let's do last 30 days. So it shows, okay, I spent 6 hours playing video games, but I spent 36 hours reading. So that to me is like, okay, that's good. I'm growing myself, and at the same time, I'm finding time to have fun with other things. So that's cool. The other app that I do, of course, Evernote, but like George said, I don't take a lot of notes on my phone, but I do recall a lot of them. Like I need, like if I'm sitting in meetings and I don't have my computer, I use, Evernote to pull up meeting notes and be able to like click and navigate to certain notes that I need for that meeting. So that's important to me. And then finally, there's one called, I think it's Day Entry, which is a way for me to just jot a quick note for the day. So it's like my daily journal as I'm doing things. Like right now, we are in VBB. So I'll come in and just type VBB and hit the little arrow key. It will add a log. So it creates a note in Evernote titled today's date. And then as I keep track of, okay, I was in this meeting, I was in this other meeting. Oh, there's a little thing that I have to remember at the end of the day. At the end of the day, when I review what I did that day, it's easy for me to just recompose my memory and just fill in some more information about, oh yeah, now I remember that during VBB, somebody brought up something that I didn't write down, but I did say, oh yeah, I'm going to get back to you on whatever. It's just an easy way for me, because as we spend days like jumping from meeting to meeting and doing a lot of stuff, so we have a lot of activity towards a bunch of stuff. At the end of the day, I need to be able to review that and say, okay, I've been busy all day, I've been very active, but have I been actually moving the needle in the things that are actually important? So that's the other reason why I have this app. dock.
Alper said he's got Siri in there a lot, sure, for like grocery store pickups. Yeah, I'll use Amazon Alexa sometimes. What about screen time? What's screen time, Alper? You mean the one that just like takes this like screen snapshot app or something?
No, I think it's a default iOS app. Just tracks your screen, like what applications are you using. Like if you're using a lot of like Twitters and social media and all that stuff, it just helps you. It just tracks like your screen time compared to last week went down this much or something, and it's kind of built in. So
never opened this before.
Yeah, I have used that on my phone like a couple of months ago when it seemed that like I was picking up my phone too often and, losing track of how much time I was spending, like, navigating through social media and stuff like that. So I have used that like on a monthly basis just to review and see what that looks like and see how I have to adjust my things. But I don't use that it helps with time tracking, but not with the things that I'm deliberately trying to keep track of. Like how much time am I spending working out within a week? How much time am I meditating within a week? How much time I'm reading and things like that. Whenever I need to get a better viewing to it, then I use that.
Yeah, all this tells me right now is that I don't shut down any of my apps ever.
Yeah.
Like they all have the exact same count.
Interesting. Well, but it isn't. I thought it would count active apps, not the ones that are open.
I'm looking at app usage. But I mean, how would it all even know active? Like just in the foreground?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. What's on the screen?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just it seems to be showing just apps that have been up on the screen since But I mean, I have two monitors. I tile things all over the place too. So, like, the best it could do is which app has focus, but it doesn't seem to be doing that. I don't know. I never looked at this before.
Oh, but you're looking at your computer then, because the thing that Alper is saying, I think is the one on the phone, though.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even have an
I
don't know why you do.
Right.
Your application, do you have to just like type in everything, or can you just say starting workout and just like do like can the application just go from the audio? Does it have like an audio interface that you can just say
I think
starting workout and it will just put something into it?
I think it does have that. I've never actually used it. I got used to just, I pick up the phone, I launch the app that's right there, and then there are all the categories that I track. I just tap on the thing, start doing the thing. Whenever I'm done, I pick up the phone again, I tap the thing and keep on moving. But yeah, good point. Let me look into voice activation of that. That's a good idea. All right, thanks guys for entertaining that question. I was curious about it. All right, who wants to bring up the thing?
What do you guys think about that application? Is that really GDPR compliant or not?
Is that what compliant? Sorry, I didn't hear it.
GDPR, European Privacy Protection Data scary law, or the Europeans law, ECB is gonna go after Apple quite soon because of that.
You mean the screen time feature?
Yes. Because that is a bit of the privacy invasion, right?
Yeah. I wonder, can you disable that? I haven't looked at that. I would guess you can disable that feature, but I don't know.
Because there is more and more stories recently about more and more people working from home, corporation are deploying more and more, the tracing capabilities to the main goals to make sure what the employees, which is, whatever.
Right. Yeah, there is an option to turn off screen time.
Then.
Yes.
Yeah, but European lawmakers, if they didn't came by default like that and didn't ask you 7 times, do you really want it on? Complain again.
Yep.
Yeah, I will say Yeah, you did just inspire me to rearrange my dock. So now I've got one group for all my contact apps that I don't actually are important, but I don't actually check unless I get alerts. Now I got one for
Right.
Anki for my flashcards. I got one for Noom for meal tracking, a Rocketbook, and camera. There you
Okay.
go.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I do have. So that's another thing that I do. Like on the first page of apps, I put the ones that I'm more likely to use. Like Rocketbook is one of them, and then all the other ones that are like time suckers, like social media and stuff like that. I push it all the way over to the last page, which is like I think the fourth page that I have. So I make it harder for me to get to it. So if it's not on my face, I don't feel compelled to actually, oh, let me check what's happening in the Twitter verse. Like, I don't care. If it's not on my face, it's, it's a little bit of friction on the time suckers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. All right, I'll bring a couple things up.
Sure.
First of all, so I am working on putting together a lecture on technical writing and doing readmes, and I found a couple really, really awesome articles about it that I want to share and kind of encourage people to read. Let's see. Let's pull this up. Here we are. So this so actually Steve Losh article, which let me add it to the view. And I was like, and like someone recommended it on the conference speaker Slack, and I was like, oh, this is really good. Like, okay, great, I'm gonna read it. And then I got to like this part, and it's like, first, go ahead and read all of these articles. I was like, okay, I'll go read this article. Oh, it's actually 3 different articles, but they're all incredible. At least the ones that have made it through so far. This right here, this writing great documentation, what to write. One I especially think is good in that it gives a really, really good mental framework for about how to think about documentation. And really basically this, that there's 3 types of documentation. One which is step-by-step tutorials. Did I talk about this at the last?
No.
Okay, I'm just getting like deja vu.
Yeah.
Another like overview and topical guides and a low-level reference. So, and he's kind of talks through what the purpose of each one is and like why and how you should have it in mind. So like the point of tutorials, this is kind of that whole thing, the Kathy Sierra badass thing, where you want to be able to take someone and allow them to do something really, really cool within, I think he gave us a number here. Actually, maybe he's the one that mentioned Kathy.
Yeah,
right there. Yeah, he mentions it right here. Yeah, he like within 30 minutes they should be able to think of something. They should do something that feels really cool just by following the tutorial. Which is like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. That's really good. So and yeah, that's how you get someone into using your product. That makes sense. Then there's the conceptual overviews, which is these are the areas you're going in that are comprehensive about discussing the concepts, right? And again, like even if you're skipping the tutorial level for your projects, like this is the one that I always fight with people to add to make sure they have in their README, like discuss the actual concepts, because I'm sorry, your code doesn't make it clear. You need to actually do some writing, do it. Now, you don't have to, I think it's good to have a goal of comprehensiveness, but I'd still rather have a paragraph on each concept than nothing on each concept. So, like, do that.
Yes.
And then reference where the point. So comprehensiveness. Tutorial is you're going there to get started and get a feel for the thing. Comprehensiveness, you're going there to understand the concept so that you can create within the software, and references, you're looking up specific things. So now we're talking reference functions and such stuff. And I was just reading this, and I was like, this is great, like, conceptual framework for it. Like, I will absolutely use this. I'm putting together a lecture for our boot camp on this, and I think that that's exactly the right way of thinking about it, right? Let's see, did I miss anything from my notes? Yeah, okay. The guides, that's the overview conceptual stuff. It should kind of give at least hints on all the good stuff that exists, so that you wouldn't know how to look for it otherwise. So, okay, here's some hints, and then you can go take it to the reference. And then one of the things he doesn't say, but that I will say, if you are writing reference, link to the appropriate part in the source code. Like if you're writing out documentation for classes, methods, modules, freaking have a link there to the source code. That is by far the most helpful thing that I've seen in open source reference documentation. Especially because like so many people, like open source authors are like, well, it's open source, just go look at the source. Versus if you actually have links to correlate people to the source, then people will actually look at the source. Otherwise, freaking no one's going to trawl through your code to find it.
Right.
Yeah. Hint, Microsoft with MSDN stuff. Yeah. So I think this is really great. I'll put this as a link in the chat, and I'll put the
Thank you.
as a link in the chat as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Alper also posted a link there, how to write in plain English.
Yeah.
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 Check it out too. Yeah, those look great.
Yeah. And then I was just going through and gathering documents overall. This is a good one. This is just a GitHub repo of good readmes. Right. So like, for example, let's go ahead and put one out. That I try to find one that I know, and then we'll come pull it up. The first one. So this is a trick that I've seen people. This isn't the. So one trick I've seen people doing a lot in READMEs lately is the GIF embedded in there, which again, like that works well to the tutorial level and to immediately give you an overview of what it's about and what's the cool stuff that it does. And one of the things that Jacob doesn't say in his article, but I think is important, is the elevator pitch. You start your README with the elevator pitch. That is your application. And frankly, you should be able to get it into like less than 3 sentences,
right?
3 sentences or less. And if you can get it into 3 sentences or less, it's incredibly unlikely to change. This is probably something that's okay to replicate throughout your entire application everywhere. You don't have to worry about it staling or getting out of sync if you wrote it correctly, because the core idea of your application isn't like your change. And if you don't know what the core idea of your application is, and you can't describe it that quickly, you probably shouldn't write any code. Like,
yes.
So yeah, but like this is okay. Look, I'm looking through this. I see right away what the heck this application is. It looks something like similar to the old Windorstat that tells you what the size of everything is.
Yep.
Yeah. So here's some marketing bragging. Here's usage, how exactly you use it. I mean, this is good stuff. And then it's getting into more and more detail the further down it goes, ending with like, well, if you want to use it from your JavaScript itself, here's how you do it. Cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So this is a really good one. Oh, reframe is definitely going to be good because it's a closure thing. This is actually not a good example, but because it's short, but it does actually point to documentation, which very reasonable. Yeah. So yeah, here's another one. Oh, okay, you did find it. Good, cool. Or did I just post it up? And then.
All right. There you go. Oh, did we lose George? Oh, here we go.
We did, because Skype apparently shuts down if you Control W or Command
Oh,
W.
whoops.
Yay. So.
Nice.
Well, that's all right. I'm just trying to close the tab. And it keeps thinking it's on Skype. So no, I'm on Brave. I'm going to actually click it.
There you go.
Yeah. So just what other links did I get? Oh, how to write a kick-ass README. This was a good article about it as well, though I do disagree with some of the advice in here, and kind of, I think I actually posted on here. Yeah, about it. Like, because he starts out and he's like, you know, I don't know. He gets into like, you should have badges, you should have logos and stuff like that. It's like, man, that stuff's not that important. That's not what I'm into. It's not for advertising it, right?
Right.
But like glossaries of terms, which is similar to the conceptual stuff, is awesome. Architecture overview, love that stuff.
Nice.
So yeah. I don't know. Does anyone have any really good readmes or anything that they want to throw out as important to writing technical documentation? I will say this guy is a technical writer at Google, but I still disagree with him on some of the stuff. But this is still a good article.
Good. Yeah. I know that I am in the process of writing some README for my current project, so this comes in handy. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. All right.
Good.
So wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. What else do we want to talk about? I've got so many things. Too much stuff. Oh, this is an interesting one. This is a good one. It came up earlier today. So someone in one of the chats I'm in asked about safe versus unsafe deserialization. And someone's just like, can you explain it to me? And I think that's an interesting enough topic that's probably worth talking through, or at least I don't know if it's interesting to people in here, but because we do it is an angle on security that's important to think about. Not everyone else does, but also we tend to kind of it's just something that's good to keep in the back of the mind. So the basic idea is not all forms of deserializing stuff is safe. In .NET we used to have that problem with like marshalling objects and unmarshalling them. In Python you have that problem with pickling. And basically what it comes down to is like, let's say, like the simplest example you can give is like, let's say you have a person object and you've serialized it into pickle form, or honestly into even JSON. And you want to deserialize that object. Let's say in the constructor of the person object, it does an HTTP request. Well, when you deserialize that, it's going to do that HTTP request. Even though you're not actually constructing the object, you're just kind of taking it out of storage. So that's just and I mean, obviously, like the answer to that is like, well, don't do that. But that's like an example of how you could start thinking about it. Now, if you're talking about other formats beyond JSON, like for example, pickling, you could do stuff like overwrite magic attributes, like the dungeon methods on Python, like the get attribute one, that would enable your this object that's created, that would enable someone that's creating the serialization format to inject code into your object, which is why the people that create all the pickling documentation always says like, this isn't meant to be shared with other people. It's something that you just kind of do for yourself in order to serialize stuff to your disk. But people misuse it a lot of the time. Because if you do that, then that, again, enables someone to inject running code into your application, which is kind of a big whoops. So the way that you kind of that you prevent that is if you have a format like JSON, like basically you don't go into class design, you go to a dictionary, which is what JSON typically is, and why in most languages JSON deserializes natively to a dictionary. Then, I mean, a dictionary doesn't have anything that executes; it just holds stuff. It makes sense for that format, and in that case, it's fine. But it is important to keep in mind. It's also important to keep in mind that we deserialize stuff a lot more often than we think. Anytime you take a request in from HTTP, you're deserializing it in some way. Anytime you load something up from a database, you're deserializing. And where the conversation kind of went from there, the guy was like, all right, so what is probably the biggest vulnerability with deserialization, serialization? And I was thinking about it, it's like, because it's not something people think about a lot. It's not something we actually have to deal with a lot. But there is one situation where it really freaking screws you, and that's in the mass assignment vulnerability. And you see it all the time because the tutorials for every freaking MVC library out there show someone doing this, show people doing this the wrong way. And the idea is that, let's say you have an endpoint where a user can update their own profile info. So the user is just stored in a row in the users table, all the profiles in the phone there. You're maybe using an ORM, or you map it manually to a user object. So basically the idea is you want to load up the user object, take the request, override all the address and the description, so on. So what you'll see a lot of times is people taking the request and directly mapping it to a user object. And like sometimes that happens as part of the framework itself, like you take the user object in as a parameter, or you do it like in a dedicated code of line where you load up the user object and just tell JSON, just map everything to that. And that totally works great until someone realizes that they can just open up Postman and add an is super user :true to their request, and now they're granting themselves super user status of your entire application. So, like, don't freaking ever do that. That is and I'll point out that back in the, I think 4 or 5 years ago, Rails actually used to do this by default. It's like every Rails app in the world was pretty much vulnerable to this, including GitHub, which got popped by it, and the people that popped it were actually pretty cool about it. All they did was like grant themselves admin status and just put some commits into GitHub's main repository, which like yelled at them for having that as a vulnerability. But oh no, they put it in the Rails repository, not in the GitHub repository, just to commit it directly to trunk. But it is definitely something that everyone needs to keep in mind. Like, you have to be very, very purposeful with how deserialization works.
So yeah, let me ask you this, since you brought it up, because I remember, I remember that being an issue in Rails, and then I remember many years ago, one of the newer versions, it's actually like mandatory right now. You have to be very explicit. Okay, these are the things that we permit you to send over. Now, from when I came back to the .NET space, I don't remember. Is that something that they've added to .NET as well? Because I don't remember seeing it.
They don't, but in .NET, you have to, if you want to. So with Rails, I mean, the issue was that like you take the actual active record directly in as a parameter, right? And active record, and Rails does all the magic to actually load up the entity and map everything and so on. With .NET, if you want that ability, you have to like jump through hoops yourself and write your own model binder that does that. So it's not as much of an issue. Like, basically someone would have had to create idiot code that did idiot things in order for that to be an issue. Now that
happens every day.
Well, no, because it's like advanced code to create. Like the people who make those mistakes don't usually know how to make model binders.
Right.
But I will say, like, what people will do regularly is, just in the code inside of there, they'll load it up and then do a JSON deserialization to that object. And the problem is, like, there's no way for .NET to prevent that, because that's totally a legitimate operation for deserialized object to do. It's just not it's not legit in this context, but there's no way for .NET to know that that's the context you're using it in.
Right.
Yeah, so I think I think .NET kind of gets saved by the fact that it's harder to do it to begin with, but also gets popped in a different way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good point. Yeah, good point.
Yeah. So that's one thing I like. I was ranting about lately.
Right.
Good. Then I guess the shit. How many rants do y'all want to hear? I'm like looking at my notes. I'm like, oh shit, I have several more that I noted. Let's see. Which of these can I post as an actual discussion topic? Here's one. This was asked by a beginner in a Python channel recently, but it probably applies to a lot of languages. And they were asking, how do you know whether you should build your own classes for something or just use functions? And I think that's a pretty interesting topic, especially once you get into languages where you have the option to have top-level functions. So, Claudio, when you code in Ruby, I know everything's an object, but how are you making the decision whether to make classes or to just have some functions?
Well, let's put it into context, because the Ruby work that I do is really contained within Rails, right? So I would say that I guess I know more of Rails than I do of Ruby, right? I don't go into like the very specifics of the language. So I normally just do, whatever is enough to get Rails bit working and get stuff done. But I am thinking like since recently I got into say Angular projects that are using TypeScript, where we do have both options, right? Whether just to use the top level function or a class. I cannot tell you that I have a strong, hold on that or a strong opinion about that. I'm almost like, well, if it is a function that it's a very distinct activity that's going to be used all over the place, and I cannot find like an abstraction where that activity would go together, then it's a top level function. It's just one distinct activity. If on the other hand, I do have like a bunch of functions that they started as like separate top level functions, but now I'm starting to see like an abstraction, they always tend to go together, then it makes me wonder, should that really be put inside of a class? But then again, I'm new to
module. You can still do a module. You can still do a module.
You can still do a module. Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Yeah.
So what would be like what should I think about like to make that decision? Do I go class functions? Do I go module functions?
So does anyone else have any because I can launch into my thoughts on it, but anyone else have thoughts? All right. So I think that's kind of the wrong. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's an angle for it to think about that. Like I start thinking about it in a different direction, right? Because I think there's kind of two different flavors of coding, two different directions you can go, and those generate different answers for you. And neither of them is something you should probably be worried too much about until you have the experience to like be able to feel this out. But generally you have like these two directions. One which is the domain modeling direction, in which case you try to identify all your concepts, encapsulate them in classes that do things, and ideally, because it would be that you don't just have a bunch of properties that you can set and get on there, because that would be the anemic domain model anti-pattern. Right. So if you lean all the way in that, I would say like no setters on objects.
Sure.
Everything's changed in a dedicated way, which by the way gets rid of a serialization issue.
Right.
And then the other thing is so no setters and objects, and even maybe no getters. Like if you can get away with it, no getters. Just hide that entirely. But I think if you're going that direction, right, your main organizational like unit is the class, right? That is what you think in terms. Versus the other direction is you go in the functional programming style, in which case you say, sure, we can use objects, you can classes. I mean, if you're JavaScript, just freaking use an object, whatever.
Right.
Where the only point of it though is to be anemic and is to hold structured data. The only methods you're putting on there are like little helper functions, like maybe a get full name function on a user class where it's first name last name, though I think even that is probably going a little too far. I don't love that example. So in that case, your main organizational unit is the module, right?
Okay.
And you could still have state because you can have a function that returns a closure, and from that closure you could do all sorts of stuff. You could even return an object, which, if I find that there's not a lot of cases where you have to return two methods that worked with in conjunction. Like at around the same time, it does happen. In that case, you just return an object which has those methods, and that's a slightly different usage of objects. But I think so. Like I actually for the last like 5, 6, 7 years have been leaning more in that camp, which is not that I don't do domain modeling, but the domain models are generally limited to a specific part of the application, which encapsulates the logic, and I everything else I tend to do in a more functional style.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the case front end, back end, or do you go different style if you're doing like back end type of work?
I mean, I try to avoid writing classes in Python too. So yeah, in Python I probably did it even more than in .NET because there aren't really great IOC containers and stuff like that. Yeah, and so in Python there's a great library called NameTuple, which makes it really, really easy to generate just a structured data. Like you really just pass in, here's the properties I want, and it just generates it for you. Yeah. So.
Interesting.
Yeah, it depends on the language how much I lean to one direction or the other, but I think I am always leaning to the functional style and keeping stuff as stateless as possible.
Sure.
Yeah. And to me, if stuff is being stateless, it might as well be top level within the module. I don't think there's a lot of point in classes for grouping it together at that point. Because classes are all about encapsulating their state, and now you're using it for grouping. And if you have modules in your classes, that's the better abstraction for grouping stuff anyway.
Okay.
Which I think we're about to have in C#, but I'm not 100% sure. I guess there's going to be top-level functions inside of namespaces. Yeah, it's a little different, but about the same.
Okay.
I don't know. I've been thinking about this one for all of like an hour and a half, so not far from 100% of it. And yet I've managed to talk about it this long and have an entire write-up.
There you go. This is good.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah. It is interesting though, because like different languages like push you in a different direction there, and we like to say that languages don't matter, but yeah, they do. Yeah,
they do.
Yeah.
It's like my realization, and I think I've mentioned this before, like with spoken languages, thinking in a different language changes the way you approach problem solving. So if I'm thinking in English, I'm problem solving in one way. If I'm thinking in Portuguese, I'm going with a different approach. So with programming languages, same thing, right? If you're told you have to solve this in JavaScript, you have to solve this in C#, you have to solve this in Python, the problem solving is going to be different.
Yeah.
Right. And then how much do we, like, I believe there's like benefits if you go with, okay, I am thinking in Portuguese, but what if I apply the English way of problem solving that? So in programming language, okay, I know that I'm going to be writing TypeScript, but if I think from a Python standpoint, what could I try? How would I make this different, right? Does it like open up, instead of being stuck in a way of doing things, well, open up your horizons. How much can you benefit from that?
Yeah, and in Python, it's like, yes, I can, and then you do it, and you're like, this is fine.
Like, okay.
That's the attitude with everything in Python. Oh, I guess it's not the worst.
I haven't done anything in Python, and I see like there is a growing trend, or so it seems like, where I keep hearing more and more people using Python, and I'm like, should I be looking into it?
It's fine. I mean, like, it's fine. I'll pull it out for scripting every once in a while, though I'm trying to make Racket my default for that slowly. Okay. I mean, it's got it's got decent built-in libraries, and it's fast to do certain types of things, and it is useful. But it's like a friend I have who's like very, very good at Python basically said, like, he's like, Python is the second best language to like do any given thing. And like never, and I would probably downgrade it to third best from my experience, but still, like, that's not terrible. that's not, that doesn't mean you shouldn't use Python. It's a good choice a lot of the time. It's just also not going to be like super inspiring.
Okay. Yeah. So is there like the use case where it's like, oh yeah, you should use Python for that? Is there anything where it's like, yes, this is the thing for it?
Yeah, when you find the Python has the libraries that you need for it. No, I mean, like, I don't know, data science people use it a lot, and it's specifically though because there's a lot of good libraries, and it's reasonably easy to work, and it's less finicky about syntax and other stuff. So, and data science people aren't like, dev toolinged out, so they're
okay.
But
makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's to me, it's like, it was my default scripting language in which I would reach for to like hammer out, like, I just need some code to do like a thing blank. Like, I just need to script this thing. I'd reach for Python then. I still bill a lot of time and try to, again, move it into something a little more fun, but yeah, it's all right.
It's all right.
Because I was thinking about that too, because the other day when I was doing like AWS programming, right, like writing lambdas and stuff, and the whole thing is just basically a bunch of APIs, right? I mean, if you're not doing anything really deep, you're just taking data, put it into a queue, pop it from the queue, do something else, put it into S3 and stuff. You look at it. In the end, if you just really zoom out and squint, all you're doing is just basically calling some API methods. So, and each AWS just provides you SDKs for every language under the sun to be able to call those APIs. So, like, for certain tasks, language, depending on the task, I guess, the language may just become an implementation detail. You're just going to call the same services, passing the same data, and then react to the same things. But even in those situations, we were just doing something like, okay, let's do something with Python. And we have an RDS database on AWS. We're just trying to get some data from AWS RDS database, SQL Server. So we look at the Python, and then we looked at the SQL driver libraries, and they're still ODBC. So, like, apparently Python SQL Server combo is not a very common
stack. It's not. I had to do that. Yeah.
So in those cases, you're like, okay, yeah, but I don't want to be the first one just like blazing the trail here, so we just like switch out. We'll just do JavaScript then, right? So I mean, in certain cases where you're just doing, when AWS doing a lot of the stuff for you, I mean, you can just get so far by just putting some API gateway, putting some queues, and then popping some lambdas in there, and putting things into S3 and popping them up. You can just basically write it in Bash script if you want to, and going from, especially the ones that I've seen so far, going from like .NET lambdas to like a JavaScript lambdas and stuff, just didn't make much of a difference. But again, it's a different kind of task where you're just like I'm not really thinking in terms of the programming language. You're just thinking in terms of the operations that you're just gonna do, right? I'm just gonna accept a request. I'm just gonna pop something into a queue. I'm just gonna get it from the queue, upload to S3, send an email, whatever. All those things are just by, when you think about it and you're using existing services, they're just like technology agnostic. And then there's and that's why it's a service, and that's why there's like an SDK for it in every language under the sun. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I will say, so Python does have this going for it in that vein, that, like I said, Python has a pretty decent standard library. It also has quite good reference level documentation for its standard library. Like I like when I need to know the details of how not great conceptual level like ones where you get the concepts, but when I need to know the details of how a specific thing works in Python, it's actually very easy to find and to get it working and stuff like that. So that kind of relates to that, because I've had to do some AWS work with it lately as well. Kind of reached for it for the same reason, because it's easy and it's built in and whatever. Hey Albert, have you ever used LocalStack in your AWS work?
LocalStack, I don't know what LocalStack is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's something that I've been struggling with lately. It's its own company, so they have like a pro level and a free tier, but they're free. Basically, it's AWS in a Docker container, so that you could develop a bunch of AWS stuff locally without having to hit AWS services.
I have my opinions about that, but generally, I think I can just point to some articles and the link. But generally, that's not really something that I would do, because of the differences that you're gonna get between like the local implementations of whatever AWS services that you're gonna kind of like I guess mock or something, or run locally. So I mean, I found that it just provides only a marginal benefit, as opposed to just like deploying if you have infrastructure as code, deploy the code, build your infrastructure, test everything, and then just like tear it down kind of thing. So
if you have infrastructure as code, which means if you have ops people who know what they're doing with AWS and so on.
Not necessarily. You can look at like service application model, like SAM. Mm-hmm. That's just pretty easy ramp to just like getting your stuff up there. It's just a YAML file, but it's not like CloudFormation. If you want to go deep dive into CloudFormation, you can, but the beginner SAM templates are very, very approachable. You just say, okay, here's my API and here's my function. This is the entry to the function, and then we'll just create everything for you. And then you just say, okay, I'm going to use this queue or this SNS topic.
But then you can't work when the internet drops, right?
You cannot work when the internet drops.
Yeah,
that's correct. But
that's not a good time for that.
That's the whole thing, though. Like you have anything that's causing a side effect, you're calling an external service, or you're retrieving something from the external service. You know what their contracts are, right? So you know what the API of an SNS service is, or what the SQS will return to when you pop something. So all of those things will be just JSON. So as long as you have those things, You just pop them into, and then Sam does this for you. You can just say like Sam local generate event, and then just pass in the name of the event. It'll just generate a JSON for you, and then you can still work offline. You're just assuming that, you know, SQS or API gateway is just going to send that event to you. And in your case, you're not really worried about, you know, testing if API gateway is going to work or not.
Well, yeah. I'm in my situation. It's me, and I'm like part-time on this, and I don't know AWS and stuff like that. And I have two completely junior people that also don't know it, and we need to show some progress quickly. So it was like, I need to be able to use like SQS and SNS and stuff like that, but I can't be like setting stuff up or like troubleshooting anything for anyone. And I can't be spending time learning the whole infrastructure as code thing. Plus, I find it so boring, I want to die. So.
Yeah. You may want to take a look at Sam.
Okay, I can
doesn't take that much time. I mean, it's pretty high
level. Well, we're at time. But yeah, that's a good tip.
That's right. Okay, great. Lots of good discussions as usual. Very cool. Well, thanks everybody for joining in.
Yeah, thank you.
Participating. Yep. And I hope to see you guys all next week.
Thank you. See you.
All right. See you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
All right.